the caliper now, and more importantly, or more specifically, the pistons. So these white pistons here on these brakes. Now they have a seal on the inside which separates the oil from coming out. And to get the best brake feel and to get the best brake setup, we have to move the pistons out, clean around the piston with mineral oil, in this case for Shimano brakes. Dot fluid would be for SRAM. And then we're going to push the pistons back in, and that's going to lubricate those seals, allow for a much lighter brake feel, and it's going to be a lot easier to set up the brake, center the brake pads once we've serviced these seals. So let's do that right now. I have my, this is a 3mm Allen key. You need something that's going to fit inside of the grooves there, because we're actually going to hold that in place, pump the brake lever, and the pistons are going to come out and actually touch, or nearly touch, this Allen key. You can use an Allen key, you can use a wrench, whatever fits in the slot here. You want it to be as big as or as tight as possible in this groove. So if you go too far, then the pistons will fall out, and then you have to do everything again. So I'm just gonna, just off camera here, I'm just gonna pump the brake lever, and then I'll show you what the pistons should look like once they're out. Okay, so pump the brake lever until the pistons came out. You can see this kind of ring here of dirt, and then a cleaver. That's kind of where the seal sits. So we have to push the piston past the seal in order to clean this off, and then apply some mineral oil to this point, push it back in. Now, the reason we do this is if I stick this pick back in place, you can see that there's 3 of them. You know, this one here, this one here, this one here are all pretty similar, but this one in the corner just there is not fully out, even though we bled the brake and clean the caliper. This piston right here is still is a little bit sticky compared to the rest, and that's really where the brake feel comes from. The power, it's all the pistons working together. So this one in particular, we're gonna have to clean and lube up just to get them all working the same. Okay, so I'm gonna take the Q-tip, dump that in the mineral oil up there. Can see it's all wet now. I'll take this over to the brake caliper. I'm going to start cleaning around. You can already see that that dirt's gone. Cleaning around each piston. Top and the bottom. Just a little bit of dirt in this part. There we go. Go on the bottom side here. There we go. You can see how much dirt is on this Q-tip now. It was white. Now it's completely black. So again, we have to remove all this dirt. And the mineral oil will remove the dirt and leave some excess fluid there. So when we push the pistons back in, the seals will be all lubricated. Okay, so we got the pistons all clean and lubed. I'm going to use some needle nose pliers. This may scare some people, but if you're careful, there's absolutely no problem. If you're worried by this, then you can use something plastic, but I tend to find this works just effectively. So you be square edge on the piston. Don't want to be off to one side. Square there. See, I just push it back. Nice and gently. If you go too fast, you may push out the others. There we go. And the fluid will come back into the bleed cup. There we go, that one there. That one there. Now I'm going to take my my Allen key again, stick it in, repeat this process in terms of moving the pistons out, and we'll see if this piston here is now equal to the others. Okay, so there we go. So now all the pistons are equal. You can see that the slot just down there where the rotor goes, they're all pretty much in line with the side there. Don't want to go any further than that, or else the pistons will fall out. So now we'll just retract them back. Okay, there we go. So the pistons are pushed all the way back as far as they can go. They're flush to the caliper. I'm going to take some brake clean and remove the excess fluid there, including the bleed nipple. And dry it off. Now if you're worried about excess fluid still being there, you can take some blue paper towel. It's very porous. Stick it in between the caliper, remove it, check to see this one's dry. So you can check the bleed port nipple there too. Yep, all dry. So we removed all the fluid. So now we can put the wheel back in first. Pads will go in second. And got my axle, Allen key. Disc obviously goes to the brake side. I'm going to come up, push the pulley down for the derailleur, line my chain up. A little bit hard to do from this angle, but so the wheel's in. There we go. Axle in, and then just tighten it up. Okay, so here's our brake pads. These are not Shimano branded ones, but they kind of all work the same. Got our pad, second one, brake pad spring, and the pin. Now these are all pretty dirty, so we're going to have to clean these up. I personally don't like using any chemicals in these. It can make your brakes squeal for a little bit afterwards. I'm just going to use a clean rag, probably this blue one here, and just wipe all the dirt off, and just inspect them, make sure there's still lots of pad life left. Okay, so I'm just going to take the pad, clean the gunk off. Ideally, you want to not touch the pad material as much as possible. It's kind of harder than it can be. That one's clean. You'll never get the actual pad surface clean unless you sand it. Or if you're having troubles with your brakes where they're squealing, there's no power, maybe contaminated or glazed. In that case, honestly, it's just cheaper and easier to just replace your pads rather than mess around for a couple of hours trying to sand them, heat them up. Just replace them. Okay, so we got that kind of clean. Let's have a look here. So yeah, they're still kind of black, but that's all right. Pad material itself, kind of see it's a little bit shiny. There's pretty small rotors on this bike, so these brakes tend to get quite hot. We can check the pad life. Still pretty meaty, so these will go back on. Okay, we're back over at the bike here. Now it's time to clean the disc. You can see that this disc is pretty gross. So we're just going to take some blue towel, some disc brake cleaner. And start to clean the disc. The only surface that really needs to be clean is just the braking surface, which is from this point to that point. This part here doesn't really have to be that clean. It's not that important. It's just a cooling surface. Keep going around that so you can see how much dirt is on that side. That's going to affect your brakes, and then we'll go ahead and do the back. Again, all that dirt does not help your brakes work well. Okay, next real important step is to line the caliper up to the disc. Now you can kind of see on either side of my finger here, there's the little space for the disc to go. Now I've set mine up already almost dead center. And this reference line here, this is the caliper kind of, it's two pieces. This center line here is a good indicator to line up with the disc. But let me show you, let me make a bad adjustment and show you how to fix it. Okay, so I just moved the caliper myself. You can see now, if I zoom in, ton of space on this side, barely any on this side. So we're going to have to loosen these bolts to be able to move the caliper back over. Now these bolts, most of them are 5. If you're running XTR, it's probably a 4. They'll be quite tight, but you only have to go maybe a quarter turn this one, quarter turn this one. See if you can manually move it. There we go. So I can move mine now. We can line it back up with the middle. You can just quickly spin the wheel and just see. And not having the pads in means we can actually look down and see what's going on. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to tighten this one. Tighten this one. Double check this one again. Just some cleaner in there. Don't have to worry about that. Now we'll put the pads in. Okay, so I'm going to take my pads. Pad spring, this is going to go around the edge there. You can hold it with 3 fingers. This one just goes on the other side. Now here's a good tip. If you grab the pad and the spring on both sides and just flex it a little bit, it's going to add some more spring tension to it and just make your brakes feel even better. So let's slide this over to the caliper. You'll have to compress it and line up the brakes. The pad spring is going to make it go kind of like a V shape. You're going to have to make it into, like, I guess, a rectangle, you would call it. Slide those down. Might have to wiggle it a little bit. Kind of hard to do when you're holding the camera, but there we go. They're in now. Almost in now. There we go. Now line top of the pad, top of the caliper here. So we got our pad in, pad spring, other pad, and it's flush now with the top. So we can take our pad pin, stick it through, and then tighten that up with a 3mm Allen key. Okay, so I tighten that up, put the retaining clip back on. See plenty of space there. If I spin the wheel, pads aren't hitting, but the pads aren't, or the pistons aren't pushed out enough to really make contact yet. So we're going to have to go to the lever. I still have my bleed cap on. I'm going to pump the lever. You won't be any resistance for a little bit. And then as you pump more, the pistons in the caliper will move out and meet the disc. So just spend 30 seconds just pumping this up. If everything went perfectly, then both pads will be lined up straight against the disc. so they both engage the disc at the same time. That's probably not going to happen. So that'll be good enough that we can see. Let's go check. Give it a spin. Can't hear any rubbing. If there was rubbing, and let's say this side here was further out, pushing or making contact with the disc, then we'll put a small flat blade screwdriver in behind this side to then take up the room and push these pistons back in. Let me show you how to do that. Okay, so I just manually moved the pistons here, but these pistons on this side are too far out now, which means that this pad hits the disc. Now to reverse this, we're going to go behind this side. And because we lubed the pistons, they're pretty easy to move. We can just apply a little bit of pressure, and that's going to re-center the brake. And if it's really not working, we can keep this held down and then pump the lever, and it's going to make this side of the piston, or this side of the caliper, those pistons move out, and then make those move back in even more. And then we can center the brake. So now we can see that there's space there and there's space on that side. And this is really where the power comes from, because the both pads are hitting the disc at the same time, creating no squeal, just 100% power. Okay, so now the brake's pretty much done. We just grab our plunger, stick that back in. Plunger's going to stop the fluid from falling out, so we can remove this guy. And that goes back into there. We have our bleed screw with the O-ring still on it. Again, sideways. That can just be nipped up. There we go. Now we're just going to clean this with brake clean. Then we can move the brake master cylinder back down to the line it was before. And we can visually reference that. But if you go behind the handlebars, you can see that this brake hose here is a lot higher. This one is just below the handlebars. So we can loosen this bolt until both sides match even. So you only want to do one brake at a time if you want to keep your brake angle, because otherwise you'd lose it. Okay, so you can see the brake line just there. So let's kind of move ourselves to where we can see both sides. Yeah, maybe just about there is good. And we'll just tighten this bolt up. This bolt, kind of important, the torque, about 5 Newton meters. This is a carbon fiber handlebar, so you don't want to over tighten this or else you'll break the bar. Now we've moved this back down. Just before I clean it, we're going to also service the components in the brake assembly here and the geometry that's inside of here. This is also quite important, just to make the brake feel just extra light. Especially if you're running SRAM brakes, cheaper SRAM brakes, guide Rs, code Rs. It's mainly just plastic parts in here that get dry as you wash it. So I'm going to take some WD-40, just any kind of spray similar. Just spray in there just a little bit. And that's going to lubricate the surfaces. You can see how fast the brake lever returns now. Now I'll clean it off with some disc brake cleaner. Okay, so now we're done. Finished bleeding our brakes, servicing the pistons. servicing the master cylinder. There's quite a bit more to it than just actually bleeding the brake. No point in bleeding it if your pads are all worn out, the brake itself is not set up. And now we have clean fluid, no air, brake pistons are serviced, the pads themselves meet the disc together, so full power. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, let me know. I do plan on doing SRAM, a bunch of other brands too, as well as just general mountain bike maintenance. And don't forget, we do have new Garage 31 Pro valves out too, so check those out. Bikegarage31.ca. Thanks.